Hey, Franchise Secrets. Today I have Brynn Gibbs on with Consumer Fusion, and we're hitting this hot topic of social media, franchisees, and franchisors. How should these accounts really be set up? How franchisees can be doing more to help their local social media accounts flourish, or should they even have access to their own local accounts? We're talking about advantages, disadvantages, best practices, all things social media. Hope you enjoy.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
Brynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you've been on all kinds of masterminds and help franchisors that we're involved with, and I've referred you to franchisors that just need your expertise, what you guys do over at Consumer Fusion, and been on panels with you, and so I can't believe you have not been a guest. So it's about time you said yes.
Hey, thank you for finally inviting me. That just made me think, how did I meet you? And it was at Springboard. We were on that panel together. The guerrilla marketing.
That's exactly it. We're not talking about guerrilla marketing today, although I think that's something that we should talk about at some point. We really should.
Working.
But we're going to talk about social media, basically social media accounts with franchisees and franchisors. There's a number of different ways that this can be done, and there's probably not one perfect solution that's going to make everybody happy. The franchisee, the franchisor, franchise employees happy. But we want to dive into that and just give some understanding to franchisors that are setting up their social media accounts, thinking Google business profile, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. There's some best practices that we'll probably talk about, and there's some advantages and disadvantages to having the franchisee own it fully without the franchisor involvement, franchisor doing it fully themselves by having one account and having zero for the franchisees, or some combination of that. So why don't you give people a little bit of your background so they have context, so how brilliant you are and the experience that you have, and then let's dive into that topic.
All right, sounds good. So my name is Brynn Gibbs. I am the founder and CEO of Consumer Fusion. Consumer Fusion is a reputation management, local listings, and social media platform. I started the company back in 2013, and I got into the franchise space in 2019, which we are in other verticals, but franchising is near and dear to my heart. It is my favorite. But we are close to working with 100 brands now. And I can tell you that when it comes to social media and reputation management best practices, every brand has similar but different approaches to how they handle the management and ownership of their social pages. So there really is not a one size fits all when it comes to this. Every brand has what works best for their particular brand, and there are several options. But every time I'm having an introductory conversation with a brand, this topic comes up. What level access do I give my franchisees? This franchisee is an expert in social media. This franchisee doesn't even know how to log into Facebook. So really, it comes down to the brand and what works best for the brand. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that with you today, Erik.
What are some absolutes with this? So we can, you have strong opinions. You consider this is a must-do for franchisors. Let's start with that groundwork and then kind of get into the nuances of the different ways to do it.
Okay, good question. Corporate, the franchisor should always have primary ownership control of the social pages, Yelp, and Google business profiles. There will come circumstances where a franchisee has a guy at the local level who's an expert and they want to create a certain social page, or they want to give that person a certain level of access. And that is where you have to use extreme caution, because you want your franchisees at the local level being active on social media and responding to comments and DMs. But if you have too many hands in the cookie jar, your process gets disrupted. An example, this morning, there was a franchisee whose girlfriend had access to all of his social pages, including Google, and they broke up. And now they have revoked the franchisee and corporate from the social pages. So you always want to have ownership control. And it can be tricky because Instagram, for example, it's a username and a password to access that account. So a franchisee or someone on the franchisee's team could technically change the password to Instagram, locking corporate out. So that's why it's important to, from step one, when it comes to creation of the social pages, corporate or a partner of corporates should be the ones creating the social pages and Google, and then giving the franchisee and their team a certain level of access depending on what is appropriate for that brand. And when they create those social pages, the email and phone number that's used, it should be a phone number and email that corporate can access. That way you can always rechange a password if need be, and you don't risk getting locked out of those social accounts. The thing is, with so many hands in the cookie jar, you can't predict what will happen in the future, but daily we hear, oh, we have a guy, my friend's an expert in local marketing, or my sister-in-law, my babysitter, and that can just create a mess when it comes to trying to have a consistent process in place. So always have ownership control of your social pages.
So kind of very tactical. Is that like somebody at corporate's office, like Erik at, frontstreetequitypartners.com, or is that an email account that's set up specifically for that, like social media at frontstreetequity.com?
Good question. Brands do it differently, just depending on kind of what works best for their process, or if they have a partner in place that handles it for them. So corporate will always be able to access the Facebook Business Manager account and have ownership of that, and then add their partners if need be. So yes, you can absolutely create specific emails for social access. Just kind of depends on which site as well.
All right, let's start with one way, and people right now are probably thinking, oh no, I've already done the thing that I'm not supposed to do. I did that thing. And now what do I do? So let's say someone has 20 locations, 20 social media accounts out there with all of them, and they've given the franchisee ownership. They have ownership. The franchisor has zero ownership. What should they do?
So they should do an audit of all of their locations at first. And so that audit should cover the most popular sites to start. So you'll want to audit Google, Yelp, Facebook, Instagram, X, even TikTok if the brand's on TikTok. So from there, they should have a running doc that is kind of their source of truth. And that should have, like I mentioned earlier, the platforms that have a username and password, it should have the login credentials for that in that doc, as well as the email and phone number used when creating those social pages or the ones that are connected to it. If the franchisee or someone connected to the franchisee is the one who has ownership, there are ways that you can transfer it, or you can be given a certain level of access that is equivalent to the original owner. Every site is a little different, but similar when it comes to that. These audits are labor intensive. They take time. Our team here at Consumer Fusion does this all the time when onboarding new accounts. And when there are brands that have 300 plus locations, it is a tedious task, but it is so important for the consistency to make sure that the control is there. So transfer when be, and there will be some that are just rogue and scenarios come up to where you just can't regain ownership. And that's where you'll just have to take a consultative approach and decide, okay, this Facebook page has X amount of followers. The last post was from 4 years ago. Does it make sense to continue trying to go down this road of trying to regain access, or should we just create a new one from scratch? So that's kind of where, once you do the initial cleanup and there's some lingering items, you just kind of have to go item by item to see what makes the most sense, depending on the situation.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. All right, let's go down this mental list that we have of different ways to do it. We'll talk about kind of the advantages and disadvantages to a certain approach. And then I have opinions on this. And hopefully by the end of this, I'll have even stronger opinions that either validates what I think is the best way to do it, or maybe I learned something here that I need to change my way of thinking. So I'm going to kind of save that one for the last bit. Let's start out with franchisee having full control of their social. Like what are the advantages of that?
Well, the advantage if they are savvy when it comes to social media is that you're going to get great content at the local level. And that always performs better than just branded content that is posted on every location. So if you have franchisees who are confident and comfortable doing their own posting, handling their own comments and DMs, that's ideal. So if I had it my way with my brand, I would want to give the franchisees who have social savviness access, not necessarily full control, but full access. And then from there, the franchisees who are like a ones and twos when it comes to social media savviness, you want to be able to support them from, the corporate standpoint or partner of corporates to where you are doing the posts for them. We have some brands that will just send us photos and then we create the content for them and get it posted to all of their social channels. And then the ones that are in the middle, a lot of brands will do monthly webinars where they are giving like best practices, best tips, sharing what their the locations that are doing the best and performing the best on social media. They're sharing those posts with the entire brand, recording those webinars, and then summarizing them in the emails that they blast out as well, so that there's continued education around it. So take advantage if you have the franchisees that want to post, but just still have control in case you have to ever take it back. And always retrain and re-educate on your brand guidelines. An example, we're actually doing a webinar tomorrow for one of our partners, just going over best tips, best practices, showcasing their top performing locations and those posts, what they look like, and then just reminding them of their brand standards and guidelines. And just they do that probably twice a year, which I highly encourage and recommend you do.
All right. So what are some of the disadvantages of a franchisee having full control of the account?
So,
and franchisor not really having control?
One thing that happens often is the ads piece. So there are guidelines. So say someone's running Facebook ads, but the content within their ads violates Facebook's guidelines. It risks not only that location, but any other accounts connected to that Facebook business ID to be at risk of possible suspension. So it's just a matter of making sure that everyone is following the rules and doing the right thing, because if there are more than one location tied to an account, then you risk everyone being affected by that. So that probably comes up the most. An example, last week, one of our clients had a franchisee who had created content that was considered to be like racially offensive to a certain group of people, and it caused a lot of havoc internally for the brand. So again, just when you aren't in full control, things like that can get out there. At the end of the day, you don't know what people are going to post and say in the past, we've seen people intoxicated and saying something late at night where in the morning they maybe wouldn't have said that. So, it's endless. You guys all know social media. It's like the Jerry Springer show. You never know what can happen.
And I remember that. Well, it's probably happened multiple times, but I remember that happening to a brand. All right. On the other extreme, you've got franchisor only. Let's say franchisor only with just their brand. So they have their main it's the brand, franchise brand, and 0 local accounts. And this is more for like Instagram and Facebook. That's not going to apply to Google Business Profile. But like, what are the advantages of one social account that's managed by the brand and franchisees have nothing locally?
So the overall branding for the brand there, it's a little more advantageous because everything is in one central place. You don't have several options. Like when it comes to customers trying to check in or like tag the location that they are visiting, depending on how many locations there are, that can be confusing for the consumer. The disadvantage is of course just no local level content. At the end of the day, franchisees, their content performs best when it is localized, when they're pictures of the team, of the customers, of their product, of their service, of their food, local specials, how the business is involved in the local community. So 9 times out of 10, when it has the local content, it's performing better. But when there is just that one account, then it is organized, but it just won't perform at the same level as the local content will.
So then you've got the franchisor. Another option is a franchisor being the parent with children relationship underneath them, with the franchisee having some access. So franchisor sends out or pushes out like branded national content, maybe 3 times a week or whatever that cadence is. So that account is active at the local level. They push it out and give the franchisees the ability to post their own local content. And so we might want to get into how do they post local content, but like that's option, we'll just call that option number 3. Advantages, disadvantages to that.
So advantages are that every location is still getting consistent posts on a weekly basis, which is important. That helps with organic SEO, just your following on social. When you have the parent-child roles, most often what happens here is like corporate will give the franchisee or anyone on the franchisee's team access to the platform they use for posting. So say they were using Consumer Fusion. The franchisee would only have access to post because it's through Consumer Fusion. So then the franchisee or their employees, they go in and they draft up a post or schedule a post. They take all the steps and it appears as if they're posting, but what it does is when they hit post or they schedule the post, it notifies whoever corporate puts as that contact that this user at this location scheduled a post. So then that parent can review and approve the post. They can make edits and revisions. They can reject it and then give feedback to that user for why they rejected it. So they still have the ability to post at the local level, but it's monitored. The negative here is that not all brands have the capacity to police something like that. So there are some brands where they have, let's just refer to them as like just some naughty stepchildren for this particular circumstance, but they have some franchisees or their team members who have violated brand standards or guidelines. So they have set up the parent-child role for those particular franchise locations, but others that have not had any warnings or have not violated any of the guidelines or standards, they just give them free reins to where they can post whatever they want through the portal, and it doesn't go through the parent-child approval process. So there's that as well. There's also a grandparent, parent-child role to where the franchisee, if they're given full reins to post through a platform from corporate, they can set up their own team and employees to be their grandchild, to where they, as the franchisee, can review and approve anything that the team posts or schedules on their behalf. So pros and cons to both, but that is probably what we see most commonly with franchise brands is
How many, like percentage wise, how many are in that bucket? The franchisor does a lot of the posts, lets the franchisor post through approval. How many are in that group versus the ZOR only versus the Z only?
I would say that over 50% have it set up to where the franchisee accesses a third-party portal for posting and or scheduling. And then from there, the remaining 50% is a mix where they're either not on a platform or it's kind of a free-for-all where several different people have access. But I would say the majority have just like a platform in place that gives the franchisees the tools, but still allowing them to have the control.
Let's talk about, because that's my favorite, all things being equal, is to have the franchisor running it, franchisees able to post. The concern is, another concern that I've heard from franchisors is, what if they just are not active? I'd rather have an Instagram account with 1 million followers versus, 500 local accounts out there with 100 followers. My thought on that is, if they only have 100 followers on whatever it is, it doesn't really matter anyway. It's not taken away from anything. It's just not noticed. But like, what would you say to that?
That's a good point. And you are going to have the franchisees who just are not proactive in social media, maybe because they're too busy or just because they lack the skills and savviness at it. But if they have their own social channels created and they exist, then I think that any content is better than no content. So I would still recommend that the franchisor does that weekly or 3 times a week or monthly, whatever it might be, post, just so there is some consistency.
Let's talk about some best practices, kind of shifting gears here, because I think you and I both have that kind of favorite. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But let's talk about how should franchisees be using local content. Their franchisors giving them some branded content. I guess, first of all, first question, do you like it when franchisors post some branded content, maybe 3 times a week on that local social media, or would you prefer them not do any local content? I mean, branded content.
So we work with a lot of brands who do the branded content, and they schedule it out in advance. So franchisees can go in and see the calendar view, and then they can see, okay, this is already scheduled from corporate. So they know what days posts are needed. So I do like when there is postings because I think it's important. But the local content absolutely performs the best. An example, we work with some brands where they have like our platform, just like that set fee. But if a franchisee wants content created, but they don't have the skills to, make it look pretty or make it look on brand, then we a la carte out custom content creation where our team will actually create whatever that franchisee is envisioning and wants created, but corporate maybe doesn't have the capacity to help create it themselves for the franchisee. So that is also ideal. If the franchisee is not social savvy and not wanting to do the posts on their own, to still have a tool and a resource to get branded local content created for them.
So what's good local branded content? Like what does a franchisee give you, or do they give to that outsourced agency or that outsourced VA or somebody? Like what do you get? Do you get an idea and then you go create copy around it, or do they give you a video and then you cut it up and put it out as a reel and repurpose it?
All the above. We have some clients. So we have one client who's like pressure washing. So before and afters are great for them. A lot of painting companies, same thing. A lot of franchisees need help with like promotions or specials that they're running. If they're involved with events in their local communities and they have photos, at the event, or letting the local community know what they're going to be attending, that comes up often. Storytelling is huge. So it really just depends on the industry, but a tool that most social platforms have now is not just for one franchise location, but for all of them, which posts perform the best and on which platform. So if I want to see across all 100 of my franchise locations, okay, which posts perform best this year? It will spit out the analytics and show, okay, this Instagram post, this LinkedIn post, this Google post, these perform the best for like, you could do top 10, top 20, top 50. And then when I was talking earlier about the webinars and continued education and just retraining your franchisees on social content, actually showing them that content to help give them ideas. But when it has like the local team, especially the franchisee, if they're, very active and involved with the business, anything that has their actual faces will perform the best.
Let's talk about like best performing, because sometimes brands think polished branded content is the best. And you talk to an agency, most agencies that I talk to, or founders of agencies like you and others, they're like, Erik, we think we might know, but at the end, it's what the data says and it's what gets kicked back to us. And then we know why most of the time. And an example of that is I had a LinkedIn post and it was my VA. I didn't do anything with it. They made a video from one of my podcasts, put it on all the platforms. All of a sudden, that thing on LinkedIn where I normally get 4,000 to 5,000 impressions per post, this got 45,000. It was like 10x what I normally get this one thing. And I haven't, shame on me, I haven't looked into why.
I was going to ask you why. Like, what was the
I know.
thing?
Here's what I think. I think it was because it had a wider reach. And I think that's what it was. I think that's what pushed it over. I'm looking it up right now. I stand corrected, 38,946 within a week. Yeah, within a week. And the post was why scaling is key to hiring top talent. Discover how expanding your business boosts growth and enhances, and then it says see more. So little hook there, and it enhances, and people are like, what?
Actually.
And then the thumbnail says the crucial link between scale and A players. It only got one comment and 18 thumbs up, but it had almost 39,000 impressions in a week. Any thoughts on why?
Did you post that or somebody else posted it and you shared it?
No, that's me, Brynn. That's me.
Well,
that's my stuff.
You said in the beginning,
you
said they created. So
they, meaning my VAs, created that. So it is original content from me, but I think I know where you might be going with, there's another kind of thing to somebody else's stuff, but that's just me. That's my 59-second reel that is actually on LinkedIn. And just to go a step further, my VAs go to each platform and they log in as me and post it organically versus using Hootsuite or some third party. So I don't know if that makes a difference or not. So that's a little bit more detail.
I mean, my mind initially went to who posted and was it reshared, but also the hashtags and if you tagged people or organizations that had a massive following, or if it got reshared by somebody with a massive following. So that's initially where my thoughts went, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I don't think it did. Maybe it did get reshared, and maybe I should look at that because that's really important. Let's talk about resharing while we're there. I just heard some stuff on resharing. I'll just tell you, friend of mine who has a massive following and is always trying to understand Instagram's algorithm and what works. And he was sharing with me the other day that you go take somebody else's like post or reel that performed really well, and then you kind of take it and share it similar as yours. It's not just a full share, but like you take it and kind of make it your own and then push that out. It's like those things are getting a ton of engagement, a ton of reach versus, other things. So that's just recent. I don't know if other people are doing that right now, or that's just more what he's seeing in his little
No,
area.
people are absolutely doing it. And outside of franchising, just influencers in general, like things,
Yeah, this guy that I know is an
not-
influencer. He's not even in franchising.
Okay.
So
Yeah, no,
keep going.
following things that are trending and then, copycatting, just doing your own version of it, great place to start if creating your own content is something that's new for you. Absolutely. And also paying attention to the hashtags too.
Why are the hashtags so important, and where are they important? Where are they not important? Like what platforms?
They're important in Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. They're important in all of them. Just because people will either search by those hashtags or they'll follow those hashtags. So another tool that's helpful for people getting familiarized and comfortable with social are the AI-powered caption generators that also generate hashtags based off of the caption too.
Do you want to give some names of some of these?
Like Consumer Fusion, you mean? That's the only one I know.
Hashtag Consumer Fusion. Editor, we need to edit that out. There's no self-promotion on this podcast. I'm just teasing.
No, the majority of the top players in the space have that in there.
I'm talking about software. Let's say somebody's not outsourcing that. They are the local. There's a lot of them out there that do that, right? Is that in Hootsuite and some of those that are, and I'll say this, it's teasing Brynn, but like dollar for dollar, what you get with Consumer Fusion, it's a no-brainer for franchisors out there and franchisees. Like, you should be following Brynn, and she is a giver, and they need to raise their prices. Like, I legit think they need to raise their prices. So sometimes people are listening to a podcast and they're like, oh, there's this expert and they have this amazing company. They must be charging astronomical amounts of money for this. And I was, I think, if that's you definitely will be happy if you start to dive into what you can get with Consumer Fusion and what their pricing model is. So, and I'm starting to do more of this on the podcast with people like you that I know, and I know your reputation and I know your pricing. And so that definitely is I just wanted to share that.
Well,
so,
thank you.
All right.
And you're not the first person to tell me that, but are you familiar with Tommy Mello, A1 Garage? He's
yeah, Tommy's been on the podcast.
Okay, so Tommy is
I know him.
Same here. He's a good friend of Mark and I. But he is a big believer, and he's like, raise your prices because people get what they pay for. And also you want to take care of your team, because I live and breathe by your clients don't come first. Your team comes first. You take care of your team, then they'll in fact take care of your clients. So even though you think you get so much for the price of Consumer Fusion, like, I'm still able to take care of my team, and that side of the business is great. But that's a huge compliment to hear you say that I should be raising my prices for what you get with Consumer Fusion. So thank
for everybody else, but not anybody that I send you away, but for everybody else, 100%.
I love it.
All right. So let's talk about AI and all of the social media stuff. So in some ways, it's easier for normal franchisees, meaning they're not social media experts, but they have, somebody on their team that's pretty good at it or whatnot. Like, what would you recommend to that person that is not going to go to a Consumer Fusion or outside vendor, but they're going to start tiptoeing into creating local content themselves? How do they get started? What would you suggest to that person?
What I would recommend, so if this is franchisees we're talking about, is if I were in their shoes, I would start following the most successful franchisees in their system. And I would reach out to the contacts at corporate and say, hey, can you share with me the top performing content across all the locations? Because all of the top players in this space can provide a brand with those analytics. And then I would share that. It's very visual. I always say I like things like third grade level. And so I would want actual visuals of like, okay, these types of posts performed the best for the other franchisees in this space. And then I would just do the copycat, that we were talking about, and try to recreate similar content based off of what has already proven to work. And I think that just by following the other more successful franchisees in social, they'll just continue to get motivated and inspired by what they're doing. And then even if it's not at the same level, some content is better than no content. I would just try to recreate what the other franchisees were doing if I didn't feel comfortable in creating it myself, or I didn't feel confident in the level of savviness. So that's what I would do.
Some people think they need to be at a certain amount, or that more is always better. And there's something to be said by producing more content. I'm in that phase right now. I have been for the past probably 2 years of having five things go out a week. And I'm paying for it. And I'm getting ready to, level up content even more in terms of quality. What do you say to that franchisee that's like, I can't do 5 a week. I can only do 1. Should I start with 1, or am I better off just waiting until I can do 3
Start with
or
1,
5?
but then look at the analytics, look at the data, and that will inspire them. If they're getting more leads, if they're getting more customers, they'll be more excited to put out more content.
Gary Vee has a new book out on what's it called? It's Day Trade and Attention. Have you read it or listened to some of his podcasts?
I love his podcasts. Listen to them all the time.
So I think a little hack is, if you don't want to read the book or listen to the book, most of these authors like Gary Vee give away a lot of that stuff and the top stuff on podcasts. So just Google that, and he's been talking about it for a while, Day Trade and Attention. But it's I think it's really good.
Yeah, I think I listened to a podcast where he referenced this new book, but I haven't read the book yet. But he was like, if you are not putting 40 hours worth of strategy around your social content, then you're behind the game. And when I heard that, I was like, crap, because even personally, I'm not there. But he's right. He even called out trade shows. He's like, so many people are old school with trade shows, and they put so much time and energy months in advance before a trade show. And you're not even guaranteed to have the eyes walk by your booth. But imagine if you put that strategy and attention into your social pages. And when I heard that, the next day, it was like, we're hiring a videographer. Yeah. I just need a little Gary Vee in my life.
I know. What do you think franchisees should be doing from that local content with customers, or in the 4 walls, or in front of their customer? Like, what are some of the things that some low-hanging fruit that they're not taking advantage of?
Giving away free products or service to local influencers that aren't huge with their followers, maybe like in the 10,000 range, but they're like big in their local area. That I've heard a lot of franchisees have good success stories starting there, because the ones with 100,000 plus followers, they're going to be more expensive. They're going to have certain requirements, and it's not going to necessarily be local content. So if there's like somebody who owns a business in your territory, start there, because you know that their followers are going to be in your area. So that's a very easy way. And they're social media experts, so they can do the content, and the franchisee doesn't have to worry about it.
So you look at, let's say it's in the beauty space. You don't have to have a beauty influencer necessarily. Nope. Is that what I hear you saying? Mm-hmm. Let's use one of our brands, Go Glow.
Okay.
Or another one of our brands, Hello Sugar. Or it could be Hawaii Fluid Art, or Magnolia Soap and Bath. They're all kind of going after that same similar type customer. What kind of influencers would you suggest for them at the local level?
I mean, it's not a one size fits all. It can be anyone with a strong following that puts out good content that doesn't hurt to look at. I mean, so we can use the Glow brand. If it is, a female with 11,000 followers, and she just shows like a before. This is before I visit the location, and this is the after, and she does a little reel about it. It can be as simple as that. And it can be a local realtor. It can be a bartender. It can be anyone within that local community.
And they have a following. And do they consider themselves an influencer, or do they just have a following?
At that point, I feel like they just have a following, but maybe they have aspiration to be more. And who's not going to get excited about free product, or even if it's a small amount that the franchisee pays them. But
yeah. Like what are some of the amounts like that someone would pay, or the value of the product? Like, what's enough?
Well, I think it depends on who you target. So I have heard that somebody around the 10,000 mark is like 1,000 to 1,500 for a post. I have not fact checked this, but that math tracks in my opinion. And then I've also heard what people with 100,000 and then even 1 million plus will charge. So it really just depends. But if it were something that I were just starting in, I would, start on that smaller scale, but you're going to be blind to it if you don't have the data and the analytics behind it. And if it's product based, or if you can have a promo code and then track all of the traffic based off of that promo code, I would just start there and just have as many conversations as you can about it and talk to several different types of influencers, and they'll, give you the knowledge that they have. And you don't necessarily have to go with that person after having a conversation with them. But I would just learn as much as I can from them and see what, the best option would be for my business.
All right. So one of the things that I've done quite a bit in the franchisor and the franchisee masterminds is Google Business Profile. And you've been in there and you've spoken about that topic. Why don't we help some people out? Because you guys are amazing with this. So talk about like what kind of tips and things should franchisees and franchisors know about Google Business Profile?
So again, same with the social. The franchisor always needs to have primary ownership, and then they can give ownership or manager access or access through a portal to the franchisees and their team. GBPs are free, and you can go in and massage those Google Business Profiles as often as you'd like. It's in your best interest to have as enhanced of a profile as possible. So things like what's called NAP, your name, address, phone number, website, keywords, categories, payment types, parking information, products provided, photos. I recommend at least once a quarter, but if you can do it once a month, go in and add photos to your GBP. You can do posts through Google Business Profiles with specials or offers. Just the more active you are with your GBP, the stronger it will perform at the local level for Google search results for you. And reviews, I'm telling every client, everyone I talk to, every business owner, with Google Gemini and just generative AI, how Google search is changing. Now more than ever, double down on reviews. Google doesn't just look at your old reviews and the review volume and the content of those old reviews. They're looking at new content, new reviews, quality of those new reviews. And it's not just Google reviews, even though Google reviews are king. They look at third-party sites like Yelp, TripAdvisor. So focus on Google reviews, but don't forget the third-party review sites as well.
All right. Anything else with Google reviews?
So we mentioned earlier how brands will have webinars where they consistently re-educate and train franchisees on social content and best practices. Same thing is said when it comes to reputation management, and review generation. Continue to provide your franchisees with education and tools around review generation, best practices for monitoring reviews. Gamification has become very popular with a lot of brands, both with franchisees amongst one another, but also franchisees kind of rewarding their team members by 5-star reviews that they help the business receive. So some examples, like at Consumer Fusion, for example, anytime a team member earns Consumer Fusion a 5-star review, I Venmo them $50. There are franchisees who will give gas cards, gift cards, or they'll have like a month-wide contest for $250. It's completely up to whatever the franchisee would want to do, but it is a fun way to get their team more involved and consistently strive for more reviews. And again, it's a win-win because the customers are also getting a 5-star experience. So it's worth that investment, and it helps with employee retention and just kind of company culture overall as well.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple times franchisors doing these webinars, like marketing and helping their franchisees with monthly webinars. Give us a little bit more of the framework of the webinar, because I've been a part of brands that do that, and I love that they do that. So what's a framework for a franchisor that wants to level up their communication with franchisees, highlight some franchisees, and then help other franchisees?
Slides that show proof. So that data is there. You put it in their face and you let them know this works, this caused this Z to receive these results, and show them those wins. Also, not every webinar will have full attendance. So record them and then email them out after, but also condensing the hot points to a 1-minute video. People's attention span these days are very short. So condensing the hot topics into a 1-minute video and then sharing that as well.
I like that. Anything else around marketing, social media before I let you go?
Again, double down on reviews. Some content is better than no content. And also just ask people for help. People are willing to share knowledge, especially in franchising. So don't be embarrassed if it's not something that you're an expert in or that you're comfortable with. Like, you'll get there. So just baby steps.
So good. I'm a huge fan of reaching out to other franchisees that are doing well. Thinking about other brands too, maybe not direct competitors, but other brands that are doing well in social media. Follow them, like their stuff, comment on their stuff, engage with them, and then learn from them. And like Brynn said, like in franchising, we're always so helpful with each other, and franchisees will help other franchisees, so that somebody local or even different part of the country, you find out that they're doing really well in social media, you should reach out to them. One of the things I think about, hopefully we'll see a post in the franchise. If it's me listening to this, I would go straight to the Franchise Secrets Facebook group and like, who are local franchisees who are killing it with organic content? And then everyone will raise their hand and they'll start to see who's doing that. That's how I would start doing that.
Well, that's a good point, Erik. I have seen the engagement and support that people give in your Facebook group. Like, people are eager and excited to share their information. So absolutely, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, there are people in there that are so good at what they do. And I know they don't take time to have phone calls with other people, but they'll get in there and they will give help. So take advantage of that resource as well. Brynn, thanks for finally coming on. We'll have to get you on again, talk about some other stuff.
Thanks for having me. Always love time with you.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.